Bruchim Habayim B'Shem Adonai. Welcome those who come in the name of the Lord. I'd like to wish everyone in all of Am Yisrael a Shabbat Shalom at this first Shabbat of the month of Nisan, the month of Passover. We know that we are now in the midst of the coronavirus. Unfortunately, if you look around, I am here with each and every one of you spiritually, but physically we see each other over the internet. However, the lesson of this Shabbat, the lesson of this month, goes with the coronavirus, which we are right now in the middle of a pandemic. And we are looking for hope, we are looking for a message when it comes to the coronavirus, and I think if we look at this week's Parsha, we will definitely find one. So, as I said, the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus have real exciting sort of themes, and then we get to the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, and it starts once again about discussions of law and ritual. However, it starts by saying, the first verses, and God called to Moses. And this is the first verse that most children, when starting their Torah education, start with. They're starting with, and God called to Moses, and what does that mean? The rest around it. And if you look at the word Vayikra, Vayikra ends with an aleph, and if you look in your Torah in front of you or one that is on your shelf later, you'll see that the aleph, the last letter of Vayikra, called, is written in smaller script. It is a smaller letter than the rest of them. We ask the question why. Matter of fact, if you look at the word coronavirus, the C is capitalized, the V is capitalized, and the last letter of corona, the A, is a small a. So how can we tie that small a and this small aleph together? In order to do that, we first have to understand some of those interpretations when it comes to the small aleph. And as I said, it shows that on one hand, when a child starts to learn Torah, and when the child is called to learn, the child is small, the knowledge is small, just like the aleph. But the more and more that you're called to Torah, the more and more that you study and understand that the Torah itself is a guide map, a map of life, if you like, where we learn to love our neighbor as I love ourselves, where we learn to keep God's commandments. Over time, that small aleph grows. And it grows within us as we grow as adults, as we grow as teenagers, as we grow more into the later years of our life. As long as we continue being a student of our heritage, the aleph continues to grow. There is another interpretation from the Musar movement. The Musar movement is a movement of ethical teachings. So when the ethicists are coming to interpret Vayikra, they say that the aleph has to do with humility. When we are called, we should be humble. We shouldn't think of ourselves better than anyone else. Matter of fact, the Talmud teaches us that each person has the same color blood, so no one could say, my blood is bluer than yours. I am more important than you are. So here it has to do with humility. Humility to understand, one, we are no greater than anyone else, and two, that there is someone above us. Matter of fact, one of the reasons we wear a kippah on our heads is to remind us that there is a border between ourselves and God. If we do during the Kedusha, we go on our tippy toes and we say, Kadosh, 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 we are trying to reach the holiness of God, but we can never be there. So our humility must remind ourselves that there is always someone greater than us, and we need to try and act out in a way where we can heighten our holiness, but not think we are wholly, with a W, better than anyone else. Now, on the flip side of the Musar movement and humility, we have to understand the direct opposite. We cannot be so humble that we lose sight of our uniqueness. Each morning when we pray, we say, Beloved are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who created me in his image. B'Tselem Elohim Nivra Adam. In God's image, man was created. So we cannot see ourselves as so humble that we're less than anyone else, because God created us unique in ourselves. Each and every one of us can reach our own full potential. Doesn't mean that it's anyone else's full potential. But if we're too humble, then we will never reach that potential. And when we cannot reach the potential, or when we don't reach the potential, we do not fulfill our service to God, our servant's heart, as much as it should be. So we see here that humility has two sides. The Musar movement looking at it in one way, and that way being that we should be humble and see everyone as, above us. I take it the other way, saying we shouldn't be too humble, because in that manner we will not be fulfilling God's calling for each and every one of us. If you also like to look at the olive, we can look at it in a way of medicine. There's been medical interpretations of this. Unfortunately, some people, as they get older, shrink. What do I mean by shrink? They're not necessarily compacting, but over time you start to bend and you start to not be walking at your full height. And this is a medical understanding, a medical reason we know why this happens. But it's trying to tell us that even with aging, that aleph that you have, you are still being called no matter what your height or what your age. Remember going to a hospital once and visiting someone. This is about 18, 19 years ago, and the person was there very ill, and I went in there thinking I was going to comfort this person, and the person ended up comforting me. Why? Because I think he showed me in the beginning of my calling, my career, if you like, that aleph, no matter how small or what situation, in essence leads to a much larger aleph. And what is that much larger aleph? That much larger aleph is Adonai, God. We know that the Torah begins with the letter Bet, Breshit. Why not aleph? Because we know that Adonai, God, wrote the Torah. So getting to the small aleph of being called, I'm going to go with a large aleph of what I just said. Adonai is calling us. What is he calling us, and what is he trying to say during this very difficult time of the coronavirus? Well, we could be out celebrating, partying, doing our own things, not listening to any instructions, or we could be being called by God to help our neighbor, to be in our houses, to listen to those who are trying to help us, and to come together as a community. I think that the small a in the coronavirus is waiting for the large A of Adonai, of God, to come and help us bring ourselves and heal ourselves from this disease. And we know that the word peace, shalom, and that is something we all want in this difficult time, is peace. We all know that the root of the word is shalem, which means united or complete. It is my hope that we learn from Vayikra, we learn from being called, and we learn from the coronavirus that we must come together under the shadow of God in order to be unified and thereby bring peace of body, mind, soul, spirit, and community at this most difficult of times. May God bless us all, and let me wish once again everyone a Shabbat Shalom.